Hey, lovely listeners, and welcome back to the next episode of The Water Trio. I'm here with my colleagues and friends in arms, Kelly Surtees and Cassandra Tyndall. Hey, gals.
Hey.
And we're going to be talking about the energy, the astrology and the energy of the week starting Monday, the 1st of July. So, new beginnings, maybe?
Yeah, new month, new week, everything new. So how have you girls been? What have you been doing?
Well, I'm just working. Working and packing and making sure that we have all the documents for the cats to come on their first plane trip, which is crazy, but that's our life right now. So what is it? 1st of July. So we actually have the moving company coming in this week to pack up our house. That is a benefit that we've got provided by Peter's employer, which has definitely taken a huge part of the pressure off the move. But it is, it's a big week astrologically, just in terms of, we've got a really dramatic eclipse coming through, and it is a big week for us because we're packing up our home in Canada. What about you two?
Well, I'm going to be off in a national park somewhere camping because it's the first week of the school holidays here in Queensland. So kicking it off with a weekend or a few days camping with the kids and some of Lia's friends from school. So that'll be a cool experience.
That's fantastic.
Coming back to celebrate the eclipse with some of the lovely ladies from the New Moon gatherings. So it's going to be my last New Moon gathering, actually. Decided it needs to morph into something new. So.
Oh, wow. So this is like the final in this iteration, and then you're going to, it's going to have a transformation of its own.
So perfect energy for the eclipse, it feels like. So that's what's happening for me. What about you, Cass?
Yeah, I'm just super busy catching up with clients, course material writing. Yeah, just sort of under the pump a little bit, just catching up with everything and busy. So it's just, nothing particular to announce. It's just kind of in the background, getting lots of things done, catching up with my clients, and the things that I'll be releasing in the next couple of months are just sort of in the pipeline. So yeah, super busy here.
It feels like a really interesting week because we're into like the eclipse tunnel, basically. So I always feel like the eclipse season is this weird portal where we're sort of between versions or incarnations of our life. And, this week definitely has that doors opening, doors closing kind of tone to it.
Betwixt and between.
That's a beautiful phrase, Lishi. That's a beautiful phrase. Yeah.
And it's interesting. I wrote about this on my website the other day. It's called liminality, or the liminal point, where it's used with rituals and coming of age rituals, where you've left behind the person you were, but you're not quite forming who you are yet, the next stage you're moving into, and they call it the liminal stage. And so doorways, hallways in fiction, in literature, in movies and things like that can indicate that. So for those who've been watching The Handmaid's Tale, they've been using the liminal, like the doorways and corridors, a lot place to the next. So it feels like that's really what this time is about. It's like a liminal phase.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, Lishi. And some of the research I did when I was putting together my keynote from NORWAC, I was looking at this idea of the psychological concept of transitions, where it's like, endings are actually beginnings and beginnings are actually endings and things like that. And a particular gentleman, William Bridges, did some research on this, and he talked about this in-between space, which is like when you are in transition. And he said that's what people want to rush through, but because it's quite uncomfortable to be in that, I don't have the familiar touchstones, but I don't have new touchstones yet. But he talked about how that's where all the growth and all the kind of internal evolving and developing happens. So I guess that's a good clue for people who might be feeling a little uncomfortable this week, that there is a lot going on deep beneath the surface, even if it just feels a little kind of frustrating up top.
Yeah, well, it's the same as the cocoon, the analogy of the caterpillar moving into a butterfly, because the reason we never see footage of that, no one's ever been able to do it, is because the caterpillar actually digests itself into a cell soup, and what's left behind are blueprints in cell groups from which the butterfly forms, but it literally goes down into its most basic structure, goes right into it, processes itself before it can then something new. So in that chrysalis stage, it's literally just goo.
I love it.
For many of us what it feels like. I've been explaining that to clients a lot lately, and everyone's like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God, goo and goopiness. That is hilarious.
Yeah. Pluto South Node, Saturn South Node.
Oh my goodness.
I think it is hard for people, for all of us really, in some respects. It's that meantime phase that is sometimes the most scary to have to endure, you know, whether you call it treading water, marking time, or the meantime phase. It's sort of like that leap of faith that has to take you from the one point to the next point, and not really sure of that in-between stage is often the thing that kind of is really hard. It's almost sometimes the stopping point or the blocking point where people want to take the next step in something in their life, but they're not really sure what happens in the process of going from one part to the other part. And we're kind of in that other part now. So in that the time in between, and even the time in between eclipses at the best of times can feel a little bit like that, where time and space feel a little different. But on this occasion, I think it's going to even perhaps be a little bit more poignant or intense for people because of all of the Saturn and the South Node stuff that is in combination with the eclipses. So it's kind of exciting, but at the same time, it is it's different, and it can be sort of, we'll all experience it differently. But I think it's also to understand or to be aware that it is not something that lasts forever. It's just part of that process. You know, you sort of got to like crawl before you walk, and that's a little bit like that now. We want to get to the next place, but it's, you know, are we there yet? Not quite yet, but we're on the road, and we're moving through, and we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
I love it. Lisa, sorry, were you going to say something?
Well, I just thought, I mean, we may as well just jump straight into the eclipse. I know we do have something to speak about beforehand, but because we seem to be already there.
Let's go do the eclipse.
Yeah. So this is happening. It's 5:16 a.m. here in Australia on Wednesday the 3rd. So that makes it Tuesday night in the States. And really what we're seeing now is the North Node highlighted. This is a North Node eclipse. This is highlighting the Cancer side of things. And one of the biggest things for me is the need to be in our feelings, the need to be in that place of vulnerability, the need to actually sit there, not run away, not be hiding.
On the screen.
English. Oh, like, go tell.
Speak about doing things differently. Let's just put the chart on the screen. So for anyone who's watching the video on YouTube, I've actually just got the chart. So Leash, you were saying, sorry.
Just being in that Cancer space of being in the soft, mushy inside of things. But, you know, because the Saturn's on the South Node, there is the potential for pain with this as well. This is happening opposite Saturn. So there is the potential for pain in this. But the thing is, you know, this doorway we're talking about, this corridor we're talking about, if we don't feel it, and if we don't release this pain, and if we don't release the grief or any of these other things, which the South Node has the potential to do, what it's going to be is whatever we build up, the structures we build up on the other side of this, the pain will still be woven into it. It will still be there. So it's like, I don't know. Often people are like, oh, I'm going to move. I'm going to change. I'm going to move to a new place, and I'll be a different person. But if you don't leave your baggage behind, then all you do is just carry it with you and set it up and, you know, give it a little room in your new house. So the point of this, for me, one of the biggest things with this eclipse is letting go of the past, you know, which Cancer can actually do. It can look at the past and let it go and leave it where it is, and go, okay, I've moved past that. I'm moving through this doorway. I'm moving through this corridor. It's time to open it up into a new future and the possibilities that are there. So, you know, and for anybody who, I see so much on social media about, yeah, let's do an eclipse intention setting. It's really not what eclipses are about. Eclipses are really about, we don't know what's going to happen. The kings and the queens of old knew that eclipses would shake things up. So it's not about looking forward into the future in a way. It's about releasing and letting go as well. So it's much like a full moon rather than a new moon. So definitely not a time to be really setting intentions. Well, that's my take on it anyway. What are you guys thinking?
Cass?
To me, this eclipse feels a little bit like ground zero, and getting really clear about your priorities, about your feelings, about how to move forward. Ultimately, it still is a North Node new moon eclipse. So there is this feeling of a push forward and a push ahead, but it's also about letting go perhaps of the past or getting clear about your priorities. South Node and Saturn there. As you were mentioning, Lucy, about pain, it could be, about old responsibilities, things that are holding you back, things that you don't no longer want to be attached to because they are dragging you down from some kind of emotional perspective. So I feel that there is that potential to be kind of confronted with a reality that you can't deny anymore. Then you've got to make a choice about how you want to move forward from that, how you want to evolve from that. And, there is a sort of a really beautiful possibility around it. It's Cancer, it's protective, it's nurturing, it's, nourishing. And it might be about, really kind of getting clear and going, okay, well, that responsibility, that part of my past, or that part of, an obligation or something that's kind of like being lingering. So I'm done with that. I'm moving on to the next best thing, or letting go of something. So you can move on to the next thing and know that it will be perhaps a little bit more of a nourishing or nurturing point that you're moving into. I sometimes think, the energy of Capricorn, we can kind of get stuck in things because it's just what we're stuck into. And sometimes we don't know we're in that rut until, we're at that point where we're just like, I can't do this anymore. So this might be that, okay, I'm done with it, and I'm going to move on to something that is more supportive of the Cancer side of your life, or something that kind of feeds you back. And I often think of the analogy that I use sometimes when there's a part of your life that might be like dragging you down and or pulling you down, and it's just about severing that tie or cutting that rope. And it's not until you choose to do that you realize that in order to kind of feed one area of your life, and you were sending it a life raft, and instead of it helping you, it's pulling you down. That Saturn South Node can be very heavy, very just that pulling feeling, that dragging you down. It's just like, cut that tie, cut that thing, and move on to something like a new pasture, a new horizon, something that feels a lot more supportive of what you want for the future and for the long term.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Saturn South Node, which is peaking on the 4th of July, but as we can see is really going to be a theme all week. There is that heaviness, or that feeling of being bound and limited, of being weighed down by obligations or duties, and then being restricted for things that might nourish you or feed you. It's a really interesting interplay. And I do sort of see with this new moon eclipse, it's a very tight eclipse. The sun and moon are together at 10 Cancer, and the node is at 17 Cancer. So they're very close to each other. So this is sort of more of a total type eclipse. The closer the new and full moon is to the nodes themselves, the more intense the eclipse can be. And being a new moon eclipse, being on the North Node, it definitely has that feeling of wanting to push forward, to break new ground, to feed or nurture things that will carry you into the future. The nodes are these very hungry points that are kind of never satisfied or never satiated. And that feeling of urgency or that sort of extremism is really likely here. And it's definitely adding a lot of intensity to this week. But I think the whole month of July, because of course we're going to have another eclipse in 2 weeks' time, the whole month of July has this sort of heightened eclipse intensity going on. So very powerful kind of start to the week, really, with the eclipse.
Yeah. And it's almost like, you know, the feeling of this, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. In a way, it's like, you know, it's not going to kill you, but the whole point is it's like, you know, when you really go into things and you grapple with them and you get them, that's where the strength lies, you know, feeling of what you have to let go of, and knowing that, you know, even if you try to put energy into that, it's the South Node, it's not going to go anywhere. And I've seen quite a few people that are like, they've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's like, when am I just being persistent? And when is actually the universe saying no? It's like that. This will be the week in which that piece will be realized, when it will become obvious, okay, you know, it's time to let go. It's no longer, okay, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, I can move forward into this. There is, you know, there's just that bit more of a push to get into it.
Yeah, it's a very intense week. Sorry, Cass, were you going to say something?
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah,
super intense. So 2 big things that we've been talking about there: the new moon eclipse in Cancer on the 2nd, the 3rd if you're in Australia, and then the Saturn South Node conjunction, which we did have one iteration of already back in April, I think. And that's the kind of decluttering, purging, Marie Kondo thing. So we're getting another version of that coming through this week. But there's a few other things happening this week. What else do you...
Cal, can I ask you a quick question before you go? Because I do remember you talking about this. The fact that we're having an eclipse close to solstice. I think you've talked about this in the past, and is there a signification with this?
For sure. Look, I think when eclipses are sort of within a day or two of the solstice, that tends to create some really extreme weather patterns. This might be technically a little far from that. But because it is a very tight eclipse, we might also get some very weird or extreme weather patterns coming through. Because, you know, when we have an eclipse, we get the sun and the moon and the earth all on the same plane, which just creates a little bit more of a dynamic influence, even physically, in terms of tides and weather patterns as well. So that's something. And for all of our US listeners, which I know is where, even though we're 3 Aussie gals, I know a lot of our listeners are from the US of A. This is actually a huge holiday week in North America. Canada,
of course.
So Canada's 1st of July is their sort of big summer celebration. And then, of course, the 4th of July is the huge holiday celebration in the US.
Independence Day.
Yeah, the Independence Day. So this is, I think, just adding that intensity into this week. Knowing that there's a lot of people doing different things outside their normal schedules anyway. And then when we throw in the eclipses and the Saturn South Node pattern, you know, you might be feeling, I always think about holidays and how we get into the habits or the traditions that we have in holiday celebrations. And I wonder with the Saturn South Node, which does peak on July 4th, whether there's that feeling of like, I'm really done with celebrating this holiday in this way. And maybe I'm a bit burnt out by it. And I'd like a lower key, kind of more simple, maybe more meaningful, but with less frou-frou and drama.
Yeah. It's letting go of the traditions. Just because it's what's done doesn't mean it's what has to continue to be done. It's like, it's not what I do, it's the reason why I do it. So getting into that and understanding that totally. I think we talked about that at Christmas as well, didn't we? So, you know, because that was highlighting again then too. And that will be the next eclipse season at the end of this year on those same points will actually be Christmas again. So it is a breaking of traditions in terms of celebrations, maybe.
Yeah. I think it's, you know, it's good to realize that, you know, we create traditions for a certain purpose and under a certain mindset. And sometimes we outgrow that, and it's okay. You know, to quote a movie that I'm just still obsessed with, A Star is Born, it's okay to let the old ways die. You know, it's a beautiful song that appears very early in the movie, and it just talks about, letting the old ways die. So I know I'm mildly obsessed with that, Cass.
Don't worry, I caught it on the plane on the way over to the US.
That's right. And
so I took one for the Water Trio team and I watched it.
And you got a tear in your eye, so you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, you had to tell everyone that, Kel. Yes, I was a bit emotional. I am getting a bit sensitive in my old age. Yes, I was. It was a little bit, yeah, it was a good movie.
It's a total tearjerker. I bawled the whole way through it, especially at the end.
Oh my Lord. Yeah. I've seen
I was a little bit impressed by Bradley Cooper. I never thought about him much before, but
a bit impressed.
yeah,
Yes.
it's like
both of them. And the chemistry between them, holy moly.
Holy moly. Look, I also was completely oblivious to how talented Lady Gaga was, and to hear her voice, I was like, okay, respect.
yeah, she was
I have to say, I didn't like her before the movie because all I ever saw was the shock value, and I was a bit like, oh, really? All I saw was meat dresses and, you know, weird headpieces. But after that movie, I learnt, you know, I did my research, and yeah, I must say I've got a whole newfound respect for her.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's a little sidebar of letting the old ways die. I'm gonna be
so
land. So what? Yeah. What else do we want to talk
First
about?
up, we've got the Mars moving into Leo. Was that you, Cass, talking about that?
It
piece,
was me about
Tuesday?
talking about Mars in Leo. I'm a bit of a fan of Mars in Leo. So we've got Mars moving back into a fire sign, which will certainly heat things up, or fire. And this happens pretty much under the influence of the eclipse too. So
Monday night in the US, Tuesday morning here in Oz.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of bringing in, a bit of heat and a bit of fire and a bit of passion into things. And so, Mars in Leo, it's good aspect for getting things done, but also kind of, focusing on the I love that kind of slow burn energy of Leo. It's fiery, it's dynamic, it's energetic, but it's also putting a little bit of energy into things that last. Now, I also find with people who have Mars in Leo, like they have this like internal inferno within them that sometimes gets a little bit, it's not always obvious and it's not always visible because, even though like Leo is this sort of out there sign and got the reputation to be that, but I find sometimes it's got this almost like a bit of a background influence where they have this like raw inferno of power, and it just kind of keeps them maybe not front and center of things, but definitely there's that endurance component. So while there is this sort of eclipsy energy, there's, endings and beginnings. Mars in Leo can sort of help keep you sort of focused on the long-term things, that slow fixed fire, and that, keep the coals turning through the season of change. And keep you sort of fiery and focused, but not burning out. I mean, if it was Mars going into Sag or Mars going into Aries, I feel like it wouldn't be maybe quite as supportive, but I feel like Mars just moving into Leo under that eclipse energy is going to give you that, it's the stamina almost to deal with everything that's going on right now. Totally. How about you girls? What do you think about it?
Well, as soon as you said Mars in Leo, I was like, oh yeah, Beyonce, because she has Mars in Leo, which is just that, the flair and the drama and the creativity, but the staying power. She has been able to incarnate and go through different iterations in her career, and she just works very hard work ethic and just keeps going. Which is Mars in a fixed sign, can be slow to get started, but once moving, he's a really good finisher, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just happy to get Mars out of a water sign. I'm thrilled. We've had 6 weeks of Mars moving through Cancer, and we start a new month, 1st of July, Mars moves into Leo. So it is a little bit like the cosmic mojo, or the cosmic kind of fires of motivation and passion, really burning strongly and brightly. The other thing with Mars, from a slightly technical perspective, coming out of Cancer, Mars has now escaped the pressure of the Saturn-Pluto nodal influences, and Mars in Leo can now just benefit from that lovely sign-based trine from Jupiter in Sag. And so to me, it really feels like there is a lift. I know there are some eclipses that we're going to be dealing with through July, but I'm very excited about Mars moving into Leo and that sense of rising up, looking for inspiration, and getting sort of more of that vision about where you want to go and what you're going to do to help you get there.
Yeah, totally. And for me, I'm just glad that Mars is not going to be in Cancer when the eclipses are going on, because I just don't think we need to add that extra fuel to that fire of what's possible there. And I think, Kel, you've talked about this analogy, but this is fixed fire. It's the hearth fire that burns all night. That endurance you've both been talking about. So there is that possibility. I feel like it's going to add a strength and a confidence to our actions at this time and to what's possible. There is this, this is the sign of the sun. This is the sign of being able to shine bright, of being able to, and just feel more confident within ourselves. So I feel like there'll be a more self-assured nature to what's going on than the feeling of Mars in Cancer, which has been tricky. Mars has kind of not known its place in Cancer. It's been circling around to be, whereas now it can really get its mojo on, it can focus, it can get direct, and it can really get in, with the fixed energy, just go in a straight line and just keep going and keep going and keep going. This is who's the marathon runner, tall guy, African American,
Usain Bolt.
Yes, who has Mars in Leo? Just
the sprinter.
No, marathon runner. Anyway, there's one of them. I'll have to do my research. That's really bad. I've forgotten that. But just runs with chest open, totally like, woohoo, let's get this going, and like could go forever. So it's kind of got that energy to it as well.
Yeah, the fire that burns all night, that burns strong and steady over time.
When well fueled. Yeah. And that's the thing with this as well to bring in, is to remember to fuel yourself well. So
yeah. So that's definitely a big energy shift. So there's a lot going on this week as well. See how we're going.
And that brings us to you, Kel. I think you're going to talk about that last piece, which is on the Thursday.
Oh, yes. The Saturn South Node. Well, we kind of touched on that already, I think, when we were talking about the eclipses.
Yes.
And the clearing out and the decluttering. I'm like, oh my God, did I forget something? Maybe I had that conversation in my head, which happens now that I'm a little bit older.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's definitely, Mars moving into Leo at the start of the week, there's that feeling of like renewed energy and motivation. Then we have the eclipse, which highlights emotion and transition and the balance between past and future, and what am I doing in the present? Am I staying with the past, or am I trying to get to the future? And then, the Saturn South Node on Thursday, which it is a purging energy. I'm just thinking we'll be dealing with moving and packing up our house. And for us, it's not just the physical stuff, but it's the emotional transition around the end of an era. Not necessarily saying everyone's going to have that, but you may have something along those lines, either in your career, in a friendship sector. I mean, it's the end of an era for us because we're physically moving away, but it's creating this cascade of like end of an era, with our friends and with my partner's professional peer group. So there's all these kind of flow-on effects of things won't be quite the same beyond this point as they were before. And I think it's important to mark those endings when they happen. I mean, you can't, that's part of life, right? If you want to have a beginning, you've got to have an ending first, basically.
Yeah. It's that bittersweet nature of this. It's like you can see what's ahead and what's possible, but it does mean leaving things behind. But, you can't stay stuck in the past, because what's your beautiful quote with that one, Cass, that you said on the last episode, I think?
If you do what you've always done, you'll like, if you want. Yeah.
So a big week of transition. Let the doors that need to close, and allow you to sit in that liminal space as you get ready to open a new door.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, anything coming up for you guys this week other than what we've already discussed at the beginning of the episode? Courses?
No, I'm definitely in personal mode. I've actually got this week and next week off work. So nothing to promote here at my end. I mean, my online classes are always available for people who like a self-directed training program. So maybe check some of those out. I should also mention that we have announced my next retreat, which will be in Palm Springs at the end of January 2020. So it's a year ahead retreat. We'll meet Friday night for a drink and a social gathering, and then 2 days training, Saturday, Sunday. So the details for that you can find on the events calendar tab on my website or over on the Astrology University page. What do you each have going on this week?
What about you, Cass?
Same as last week. I'm just working. There's a lot of things happening in the pipeline. It feels like I'm in that kind of eclipse kind of in between phase where there's a lot of things going on in the background. So I'm just really preparing myself for a huge second half of 2019. So yeah, stay tuned.
Love it.
And I have finally got I think my calendar is opening up around now to have appointments. So yeah, if anyone wants to book in for appointments, and I will be taking any last bookings for my pattern breaking workshop as well. It's going to be on Tuesday nights Australia time. That is starting next Tuesday, the 9th of July. So happy to have anyone along that wants to be part of that.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Fantastic.
Okay. All right, gals. Well, I guess that's it. Happy eclipsing, everybody, and thinking of you all.
Yeah. And we'll see you all next week.
You will.
Bye.
See you later.